The mist has not yet burned off the fields when the two coaxial rotors begin to spin. There is no tail rotor whine here, no familiar helicopter shriek, only a deep, layered thrum, as if two machines were breathing in the same rhythm. The CAMOV Design Bureau's signature contra-rotating blades cancel each other's torque, and that single engineering choice defines everything the aircraft is about to do: hover with unnatural stillness, pirouette on its own axis, and slide sideways through a tree line with the grace of something that shouldn't be this large. This is the Ka-52M, Alligator, to the crews who fly it, hokum beat to the analysts who track it from afar. It is not a new airframe. It descends from the Ka-50, a single-seat attack helicopter reimagined in the 1990s as a two-seat platform so a pilot and a weapons operator could share the workload of hunting armor. What sits on the flight line this morning, though, is a different animal from the version that first entered service back in 2011. Years of combat exposure have reshaped it, upgrade by upgrade, into something the original designers would recognize only by silhouette. Inside the cockpit, the two crew members sit side by side rather than in tandem, an arrangement that lets them glance at each other, point, confirm, without a word passing over the intercom. Above their heads and behind the canopy sits a mechanism most attack helicopter crews never think about, an ejection system unique to the CAMOV line. If the aircraft is struck badly enough, explosive charges first blow the rotor blades clear, then punch the canopy away, before the seats fire upward. It is a violent, split-second choreography built for one purpose: giving two people a chance when 6 tons of machine around them has stopped behaving predictably. Under the nose, mounted where the earlier model carried a simpler sensor ball, sits the modernized targeting turret that defines this M variant. It fuses thermal imaging with a daylight television camera and a laser rangefinder, letting the weapons operator pick out a hidden vehicle by its heat signature long before it would be visible to the naked eye. On a clear day, the crew can identify a target several kilometers out with the television feed alone, switch to the thermal channel, and that reach extends further still, cutting through haze, foliage, and the gray murk before sunrise. It is, in effect, the aircraft's eye, and every weapon it carries depends on what that eye can find. The stub wings jut from the fuselage, no longer bare. On one side hangs a bolted, elongated targeting pod, an add-on that didn't exist on earlier Alligators, built to house the guidance electronics for the helicopter's newest and longest-reaching weapon. Beneath both wings, the familiar shapes remain: rocket pods, gun pods, and the slender tubes of guided anti-tank missiles, arranged across hardpoints that can be reconfigured mission to mission depending on whether the day calls for precision or saturation. Between the wing roots, tucked into the fuselage, the two A-42 autocannon waits, a 30mm gun fed by a mixed belt of ammunition, capable of chewing through light armor or simply forcing an infantry squad to find cover. A new digital drive system now steadies its aim, correcting for the helicopter's own vibration and the pilot's small, inevitable corrections, so that a burst fired while banking still lands close to where the operator intended. The mission brief was simple in outline, complicated in execution: a column reported moving along a tree-lined road, armor mixed with support vehicles, no confirmed air defense in the immediate area, though no confirmed is not the same as none. The Ka-52M does not fly this kind of sortie alone if it can help it. A second Alligator trails off its wing, the two aircraft weaving a loose, asymmetric formation so that no single angle offers a clean shot at both. A fish uses a reef, not for concealment alone, but to break the sightlines of anything hunting from the ground. The coaxial rotor system earns its keep here. Without a tail rotor eating into available power, the aircraft can pop up from behind a rise, hover just long enough for the sensor turret to paint the target area, and drop back down before a return shot can be aimed. It is a rhythm as much as a maneuver: rise, look, decide, vanish. In the weapons seat, the operator has already slaved the electro-optical turret to the reported grid square. The thermal image resolves first as blocky heat shapes among the trees, engine blocks still warm from a night's idling, the ghost glow of exhaust. Then, as the picture sharpens, shapes become vehicles, hull silhouettes, the boxy outline of a support truck, the telltale heat bloom of an engine compartment that marks a tank apart from everything parked around it. The crew doesn't rush the shot. Modern anti-tank missiles carried by the Alligator are not fire and forget in the way rockets are. Several of them demand that the aircraft hold a laser on the target until impact, guiding the missile down that narrow beam of reflected light. That requirement is both the weapon's strength and its vulnerability, precision bought at the cost of exposure, because every second the laser stays locked on is a second the helicopter itself must stay roughly where it can see the target, and where, in turn, the target's own defenders might see it back. The newest missile in the Ka-52M's arsenal changes that calculation. Guided not by a beam the helicopter must maintain, but by an imaging seeker riding a two-way data link, it lets the crew fire and then break away, watching the missile's own camera feed as it closes the final kilometers on its own. The weapon's operator can even nudge its aim pathway mid-flight if the picture reveals a better point of impact, a moving turret, an open hatch, a vehicle pulling out from cover it thought was safe. It reaches out roughly 14 to 15 kilometers, farther than most short-range air defense systems can effectively reply, and its warhead is built with enough explosive mass to be indifferent to reactive armor plating bolted onto an aging tank hull. The call comes through the intercom, clipped and unemotional, target confirmed, clear to engage. The pilot brings the aircraft into a shallow, momentary hover behind a stand of trees, just enough altitude for the turret to hold its lock. In the weapons bay of the pilot's mind, checklists compress into instinct, power setting, attitude, wind drift, the small dance of corrections that keep 6 tons of aircraft steady on an invisible point in space. The missile drops from its rail, ignites, and is gone in a streak that outpaces the sound of its own launch. For a breath, nothing in the cockpit changes except the small feed on the operator's display, tracking the weapon's eye view as it threads toward the heat bloom that was, a few seconds ago, just a shape in the trees. Then the picture blooms white, and the feed cuts as the seeker's short life ends exactly where it was aimed. There's no cheering in the cockpit. There rarely is, on either side of any war. The pilot is already pulling the aircraft back below the tree line, because the report of a successful strike is also, unavoidably, the report of exactly where a helicopter is standing when it fires. Somewhere on the ground below, radios are surely already crackling with the position, and shoulder-fired missiles have a way of arriving faster than helicopters can outrun surprise. This is the paradox that defines the Ka-52M's whole operational life. Every improvement bolted onto the aircraft, longer-range sensors, sturdier undercarriage, a new electronic warfare suite designed to jam and confuse the guidance of an incoming missile, LED lighting for safer night operations, redesigned cockpit ergonomics tuned for crews wearing night vision goggles, exists because the airframe has spent years being shot at, and because the people who fly it kept surviving long enough to report exactly which upgrades mattered. The defensive suite tucked into the tail boom and fuselage is not decoration. It listens for the telltale radar hum of an approaching threat, or the infrared signature of a missile's rocket motor, and answers automatically, chaff blooming outward to confuse radar-guided seekers, flares tumbling free to seduce a heat-seeker's eye away from the engine exhaust it was chasing. None of it guarantees survival. It only shifts the odds, fractionally, sortie by sortie, in favor of the 2 people strapped into that ejection system nobody wants to actually test. The second Alligator has already peeled off toward a rally point, and the lead aircraft follows, dropping even lower, riding the folds of the terrain back the way it came. The rotors that carried it in with that strange, layered thrum now carry it out the same way, indifferent to whether the mission behind it was called a success or a near miss. Below, the tree line keeps whatever secrets it's still holding, survivors, wreckage, silence. Above, the Alligator climbs just enough to clear the last ridge before it, too, disappears from view, swallowed by distance and haze, one more shape among the gray hills that will be back again, or won't, depending on 100 variables no cockpit checklist can fully account for. It is, in the end, a machine built around a single uncomfortable truth: it can see farther and strike harder than almost anything that might be waiting for it below, but it can never quite stop being watched in return. Every sortie is a negotiation between reach and exposure, between the eye and its nose and the eyes searching the sky for its silhouette. The Ka-52M does not resolve that tension. It simply keeps flying inside it, upgrade after upgrade, mission after mission, until the war it was built for finally runs out of tree lines to hide behind. By the time the pair of alligators settle onto the makeshift pad, the sun has finally cleared the haze, and ground crews are already moving before the rotors have fully stopped their slow, ticking wind down. Fuel hoses are dragged across cracked concrete, munitions carts wait with replacement rounds for the autocannon, and a technician runs a gloved hand along the underside of the targeting pod, checking for anything the mission might have knocked loose. None of this work is glamorous. It is the unseen half of every sortie, the part that never appears in gun camera footage but without which no helicopter climbs back into the sky twice. The pilot climbs down first, helmet still on, and walks a slow lap around the airframe out of habit more than necessity, counting hardpoints, checking the wheels the engineers reinforced precisely because rough forward airstrips like this one chew through weaker undercarriages within weeks. The weapons operator lingers by the nose, replaying the engagement footage on a small display, comparing what the sensor saw against what the mission planners expected to find. Every strike, successful or not, becomes data, a fragment folded back into the next round of design changes, the next software patch for the fire control system, the next adjustment to how crews are trained to hold a hover just long enough and not a second more. There is a particular kind of institutional patience behind an airframe like this one. It began as a single-seat prototype decades ago, was reworked into a two-seat gunship, watched its later variants absorb lessons from a war fought far from where it was built and kept being modified in small, incremental ways long after most outside observers assumed the design had settled into its final form.